Rachel, hello, I see you. The games, plural, that shouldn't be remastered are the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games because myriad of reasons. One, Activision have already tried to do it by remastering the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and it was trash. It was somehow the same and yet worse. They just managed to get everything wrong. All the physics was slightly off. And when you get something slightly off in a game as perfect, with mechanics as perfect as the original Tony Hawk's games, it just throws everything off. If something doesn't feel right, then everything is just for naught. But that's not even the main reason why I don't want them remastered. Why I don't want them remastered is because they're such a great time capsule of their time. And I know if someone came to it with fresh eyes, wanting to remake it or remaster it, they would, be potentially compelled to change the fashion of the time. You might have skateboarders skating around in skinnies rather than those massive, flared jeans that have holes in them all over the place. We don't want that. They might be inclined to change the soundtrack. Again, we don't want that. As much as, music is still good today, I want all those old, crappy skate punk bands on the soundtrack to relive the late 90s and early 2000s. I don't think it really works if you put it in a new context, and that's ultimately what they'd have to do to bring in a new audience. They can't rely on nostalgia alone because they gotta make that money, baby. And for me, that would just lose what Tony Hawk is at its core, which is this very late 90s, very early 2000s piece of art, and it is art that should never have to be recontextualized ever, ever, ever again.
Seeing skaters in beige jackets and Carhartt beanies would hurt my soul.
It's just not what it's about. You know what? But it's a double-edged sword because that meant also we got Jackass Tony Hawk's games with a lot of Jackass people in. And look, I like Jackass, but they overshadowed the main game. It just became fart jokes. I just want the skateboard and I want doing cool kickflips and McTwists.
I'm just going to go out on a limb here and just hog everything and just say that all of the Star Wars games that LucasArts did in the late 90s and early noughties, you can't touch them. You can't. I wouldn't even allow it even to happen. Like, we've got news that Jedi Outcast is actually being re-released soon, which again is absolutely incredible because I think that is bang to rights the best Star Wars game ever. Sorry, KOTOR fans. I just love the way that the swinging.
Yeah. Woohoo!
You disgust me, Scott Taylor. But anyway, yes, the old LucasArts Star Wars games, I don't think you could actually do anything to make them visually better. They're fine as they are. I don't think you could do anything to make the gameplay feel better because the physics that were on display in games like Jedi Outcast, Jedi Academy, and then of course you have Republic Commando and like the original Star Wars Battlefront and that sequel as well. And yeah, I just think I look back at those old golden age LucasArts days, I think, how could you possibly improve on that? Like, how could you? Even if you upped the graphics slightly, I'm just like, you don't have to do that because they're just still so entertaining and so enjoyable. So if anyone dare touch them, I mean, I would appreciate a cheeky little graphical update maybe, but as they are, it's completely fine. Don't mess with them.
That game engine is perfect.
Yes, it is. What was it?
It's the Doom one.
The Doom one. Was it the Unreal? Was it the Unreal? No, it was the Unreal Tournament engine, wasn't it?
Was it Unreal? Was it?
Yeah, it was Unreal. It was Unreal.
Yeah.
It was Unreal.
I think a lot of us found this one quite difficult because I tend to think quite positively. So I thought of tons that would be like really good as remasters. And I was like, ooh, what about this? What about this? But one thing that did come to my head that I don't think should be remastered is Amnesia: The Dark Descent. It's very difficult to explain why I feel this way. This game is like super near and dear to me, like it's near to my heart. It was I think the first horror game I ever played and got truly like caught up in. I was obsessed with it for ages. I was watching PewDiePie play it and it was just this amazing atmospheric game that just really spoke to me on a like proper artistic level. You go through this haunted house and literally for like the first hour and a half there is no pedal, there is nothing like that could threaten your life, just wee clouds of dust and the odd like musical like tone. The walls start getting big blisters that kind of hurt you a little bit, but other than that there's no monsters. And I just love this first part of the game where you realize it looks like butts, it doesn't look good at all. It is obviously on PS4 now in the Amnesia collection, but it still looks like butts. And I just feel like if that was remastered, it would seem like it was trying too hard and it would actually lose something. Whereas in its present form, it is a perfect snapshot of 2010 horror, where this game could scare you looking like this and not having these monsters until like super like long through the game. I just feel like that if that was sort of tarnished, like they tried that with the sequel Machine for Pigs. They tried to make it more petalous and more lifelike looking, and it just spoiled it. So yeah, please leave The Dark Descent alone. Hopefully I'm not alone on this. Maybe you all want it remastered and I'm wrong, I don't know. But yeah, that's what my heart says to me, so go with that.
I had a struggle with this one because there's a lot of games that do deserve a remaster, but I found the perfect one, and that's SSX Tricky. Every single thing about that game was just absolute perfection. The characters, just the maps, and like Garibaldi like jumping down that first cliff is just so cool. It's so amazing. And the reason why it shouldn't be remastered, like I'd love a port for it, but like if they just don't change anything, like don't change the maps, don't change the characters, anything like that. The company behind it, which is EA, and knowing them, what they're going to do with it, they're just going to put a load of microtransactions on it, like they're going to lock the snowballs behind like money and that sort of stuff, and yeah, that's pretty much why really. And like if they do remaster it, they're just going to sell out EA Sports big.
My initial reaction to this question would have been Spyro, but obviously they have remade it and it worked out great, and it's a wonderful little addition to the franchise. But when I first played those games and have thought about them in years since, I've been like, no, you can't touch them, you can't touch them. So I've proper turned face on all of the remasters and remakes, that sort of thing that gaming has to offer now. But one that I think I wouldn't personally want to see remastered or turned into anything like different to what it is Gauntlet Dark Legacy, because it's just such a cornerstone of my childhood, where it was playing the co-op campaign of this little arcade game where you run through, batter loads of goblins coming up from underneath and just try and collect all of the things together to fight the big wizard at the end. And it's just classic arcade gaming. Like, you wouldn't want to change Golden Axe, you wouldn't want to change Altered Beast. Like, I'd put all of those in the same category. And like the Midway Games sort of era, like just leave them as they are, don't touch them. Go back and play them on the PS2 and have to do local couch co-op and ram through all of the pointy graphics and dodgy voice acting with the sustenance like woman when she's eating all the apples. I just think it's a great game as it is. It doesn't need touching, doesn't need messing with. I'd love to see it again. I'd love to see it come back in a different form, but not a remaster, like a sequel or something if they're going to have to touch it. But yeah, Gauntlet Dark Legacy, too good to touch again. Keep it the same.
Perhaps controversially, because it's a game that everyone seems to absolutely bloody love whenever you bring it up. We got very excited at E3 because we thought we might be hearing something about it, but I would not remake/remaster Simpsons Hit and Run.
What?
Because it's unnecessary. The game itself is perfect exactly as it is. It doesn't need to be touched. The jankiness of the way the game plays, which is still very good, mind you. The animations, the 3 animations they use for all the characters, the driving, the levels, the story, the UI, everything about it is completely timeless. Going back to it now on the PS2 natively, it's a fantastic time. I would like it to be ported, mind you. I'd love to get a version of it on the Switch or the PS4. Just upscaled and have maybe retune the UI to be the same design, but just make it cleaner, crisper, make it new. But
That's remastering.
it's not really
That's
remastering.
remastering.
Shut up, Ash. Just port it. Make it kind of like how they did the whole iPad apps, where they released the HD version of it, because all it was just upscaled and it just worked. So kind of like how remasters were back in like the turn of the generation when they released Skyrim again, because it's just the same game with a different texture pack. I'm meaning remasters in like the modern sense of they actually do the whole thing again. Just port it, up-res it, don't touch the textures, make it look like a PS2, like when you emulate a PS2 game and you run it in HD, it looks like that. Do that with Hit and Run, don't remake it. I will take a sequel though, that doesn't count as remaster.
Oh yeah.
Rich,
Yeah?
what about Sexy Marge? Would you put Sexy Marge in it?
Do you want the DLC to get Large Marge from that episode, Josh?
Just Marge with her hair down.
Here we go, Josh's kink is appearing on Chatty for the first time, baby.
Oh, homie, you're so sexy with your paranoid.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Now, if you want more chatty faces, why not watch through the rest of our playlist? But I just want to say a big thank you to the brilliant channel sponsors for voting on this week's chatty question. And if you want to join the vote, then why not consider hitting the join button and becoming a sponsor today? And we will see you next week. Bye!